One up to take on the role of the youth. At the moment, Arun is going to be is on the emails, taking care of any emails that may come into the youth on the youth email, and he'll fill us in as necessary if there's things that we need to do. So obviously, things like Ryder and Ryla, we'll still get to find out about those because Arun will be passing on any emails that are there. The next bit of news is that we now have a president-elect the next year. Woohoo! And that is going to be Arun. So Arun is, sorry? Yes, so Arun is going to now take on the president-elect. So if everyone else could start thinking about what position they'd like to take up for next year. So that would be great. A couple of other things that we've been discussing and we'd like some input on. As you know, we used to pay $10 a head to go to the York on Lilydale, but we now don't pay $10 a head because this venue is being donated very nicely for our club. So our club ultimately will save $3,000 a year on costs that we would otherwise spend out of our $10 a week coming. But we also have a raffle every week. So I'm suggesting that as a club, if everybody is in agreement, that we still pay $5 a head for a meeting. It's a way of raising a little bit of money when we're not, really doing a lot out there. And that way we can continue the raffles. We could still continue the raffles, but that means that the money is going to come out of general funds, which we're fundraising for. So I'd like to have a consensus of how everybody feels about that. Yes, certainly.
That's for me personally. I don't want more stuff. If I win it, I'm just going to give it away.
Yep.
So
that's the other thought, is that we don't have the raffle at all.
I think that the raffle would be the $5 or on the previous like with money raised from raffle would always go to the emergency fund that the clubs used to have in their pockets for.
So my question wasn't about paying a $5 fee. It's why you have
a raffle.
It sort of works both ways, It used to be a raffle.
Okay.
Used to be sort of, when we had a fine session, side session, that was all involved around just raising the small bit of money to have as an emergency fund.
So my personal feeling is, as president, but I need a consensus, is that we don't worry about having a raffle. Like, I think we're all of the same mindset that really, if you get something in a raffle, you're probably going to donate it to somewhere else anyway. And I'm happy to continue paying $5, but I'd like to know how everybody else feels about still paying $5, considering that we're getting the venue for nothing. So we're happy either way, but I want to get a consensus of the members. Let's just say it for the time being, and from now until the end of the year, once my tenure is finished, we can revisit it from under Arun, but we will wipe the $5 and we'll also wipe the raffle. Is everyone happy with that? Okay, so the other thing I just wanted to touch on was these flags here are quite heavy. And I really personally can't see the point of them being here at every meeting. I think for a changeover or when we've got a special function like the Thanksgiving, like the thing next week where we're doing the Christmas tree thanks, or we've got a member of the district that might be coming along, depending on, like that's confirmed. If you want to put them up there, that's absolutely fine. But I think it's a bit of an overkill for being so formal when we're trying to be a bit more informal as a club. So how does everybody feel about that? And it does say Des carrying them up, setting them up, putting them down and carrying them out again. How does everyone feel?
We can have a non-physical version of the flags up and just have them for special events. And then, like we say, when we have a guest speaker, etc., we can have the flags and that as a backdrop, which you put in later.
Yeah.
So again, it saves you lugging the flags up and down if need be.
And I also think that the way Rotary's going, we want to encourage more membership. So we don't want to be too stuffy. Has anyone got really anything to say that they, are dead against my thinking, or because I'm happy just for you to say it?
I like the casual approach. Rotary used to be for businessmen. We've now got 2 leaders. It still has a business side, but now it has the grassroots people. In my opinion, grassroots make it easy, simple.
Less formal.
And coming from the world of business, went to the business like meeting today, you wouldn't have stuff like that every now.
No,
It wouldn't attract
Yeah.
the business people
Yeah,
today.
Yeah, it's very likely.
Mark, have you got something to add?
The only thing, if you wanted to replace something, you could have a pull-up banner. That's
Yes.
what I was thinking.
Oh, we will definitely have a pull-up banner. We need the Rotary symbol here somewhere.
Yeah,
Yes.
just have a pull-up banner
Yes.
with the Rotary
Yes.
symbol. And then that photo. And
Yes. I know. We will definitely have the Rotary symbol here, in the way of a pull-up banner, but the flags will go and they'll be up on the screen. So if everyone's happy with that, okay.
Just need to note that they do have flags on screen. Last time we did that, we did it for a while, didn't really get a good one photo out of the event because
No, you won't.
the screen the picture on the back really doesn't come.
You don't take the photo with the screen, you just take the photo of the people in the
And
corner,
superimpose it.
and you just
Superimpose the flag
white
later.
man statue, make the background disappear.
you
and
Photoshop
the flags.
the flags in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we could still take the photos in front of the Rotary pull-up banner.
Yeah.
So the Rotary is still very much in the photos. Does that make sense?
People.
That's it. It's
Yeah.
more people-based. It's more personable. Is that I'm trying to get at. Okay. Can we discuss that at the next board meeting, because we've got a few comments to make about that, but we'll do that at board level, like for pull-ups. It's enough that we now know that we're going to have the Rotary symbol. Okay. So that's probably the end of my community. We've got our high tea coming up. The flyer's been worked on, and the Catholic Church has been, the deposit's been paid, so we're locked in, and that's happening. So we've got a Mother's Day high tea fundraiser. So we're hoping to make that very successful, and Marg and I'll get together and do some ring arounds and mail outs, trying to get some corporate gifts, so we can have a really good major raffle. Okay, so thanks very much for your time.
Is anything okay international? Before you start, just probably need to grab my wine.
Do you? Okay, I'm on a non-alcoholic night, so. Okay. All right, so this week, Andrew and I we picked up a fridge at Hillside and took it to Western Emergency Relief Network site at Ravenhalls, after we dropped a number of wooden toy boxes off at BIK, along with some lots of school supplies, pencils and rulers, etc. And just as we were sort of heading over to Western Emergency Relief, we were given the privilege of carrying a whole lot of tables over for DIK and delivering them as well. Now, we've taken my name off the membership, so as Cheryl pointed out, we need someone to find time to actually monitor the people that actually show interest in our club. So I've sort of dropped the ball a little bit there. So I need someone else to pick up that please. Now the market report. I think it's probably fair to say that the market on 1st of February was probably the worst market we've ever had, I reckon. But even when it's been raining, we've had more people turn up. So we only had a total of about 240 odd people come through the front gate, despite the fact that the bowling club was going full steam ahead across the road. So yeah, so on the day we did we make on the day, don't we? So close enough to $2,600. Would that be right? Yeah. So $2,600. Look, you know, it's a respectable amount of money, but I'll guarantee that none of the store holders made any money either. So it's yeah. So at this stage, the plan is to run the March. We've actually issued put out the invoice for March. We'll have to have a serious look at how March comes up, whether we continue on in May. So everyone keep that in mind. But what that's going to lead to, if the market does sort of not keep producing money, at the moment we have 2 pages of Bunnings barbecue stuff organised. Today we put out the roster for the 22nd of February Bunnings barbecue. Yeah, so that's out. The next one after that will be the Repower Expo at Lilydale Yarra Ranges Council, which we've said we're going to have a barbecue stall at. So need you to get that 22nd of March free, please. Then another one in April. So we're just trying to do one a month or thereabouts between now and the end of April. And then when we get into June, May and June, we'll try and do maybe even 2 a month. We'll see how we go. Right? Try and keep it, because I don't think the Bunnings barbecues over winter will be quite as profitable as some of the better day ones. So we'll see how we go with that. So just please keep an eye out for that, because I think. So what does everybody think about the fact that if the market does go, is the Bunnings barbecue is something we need to we'll be able to find time for or not? And yeah, and you know, things like the high tea hopefully generate a bit that way.
And also we can support other organisations. We don't need to generate money. We just need to do good for our community.
Worrying about.
Yeah.
I would just like to point out that I did a Bunnings barbecue on Saturday with the sexual arrangement throughout many times, and we raised location.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. I think we might leave it there. I did have a look at what banners we do have at the at Watts Pavilion, but do you want to talk about that at the board meeting? We can do that. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's something we probably need to at the meeting. You probably need to have a few options that we can look at, because all the ones on that email got the last couple of days, that's going to be they're just blue banners with a couple of Rotary symbols on it. So and what we've got there at the moment is one white banner that's got I'm not even sure it says the district, but it says the club, and it talks about serving Lilydale for 65 years. But it's already had a bunch of tape, so it needs fixing up. It needs replacing anyway. The ongoing thing at the moment with the market container is that we're waiting for an email from the prospective new owners of the property. So that's leading us to what we're going to do with all the stuff in the container, right? Now, when we're down at DIK, Andrew and I there on Thursday, I had a chat with Colleen, and a lot of the stuff that we've got that we've doubled up on, if we go down the garage sale avenue, we might make $1 that way. if we've still got it after that happens, DIK will actually take it, and a lot of it will go straight overseas anyway. So it's not just a rubbish tip type thing. The scrap metal, it's going around a bit of a circle at the moment, is it? We're not really. Have we got any sort of ad going at the moment yet or not? Yeah, because somebody asked the question: is it worth? Well, what's it actually worth as scrap? So
That was me.
Well, you put in a unit.
yeah, well, that's the news. So if you went out and bought the material again, forget about the labour, just to buy that steel again, it was $4,200.
Yeah.
Is that allowed to take it?
Ideally, if you could find another club or community group doing art shows, because it's really set up for doing art shows. Frame, canvas, Shuri used to do it. Oh, it still does art show every year, and they're the frames that they use.
Yeah.
Do they need any more? No.
No.
Is there another club that might? Yes.
Yeah.
You could donate it to the club and say to them.
Yeah, so maybe we do need to put it on the highlights, put something in the highlights magazine, which
framing that's
because
available.
Michael's just put an invite out and he's got to do something this week. Well, I don't know.
Would we just give it to another club that's going to?
Yeah, would they? Yeah,
Rotary work.
Could we reallocate it to another club? Yeah. Yeah.
We want it used.
Yeah.
Let it wear out. Don't let it rust.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, let's.
Political stages. Put it out there to see if it can attract.
Yeah.
And if we've got a second round, and it goes somewhere that can be used.
All right. Okay. Well, I'm going around in circles, so that's all I've got for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Desmond. Arun, have you got anything to add? I can see that you've run away, my friend.
No, he's
He's not in the screen. So,
there we go.
Judith?
He's back.
Oh, he's back. Arun, have you got anything to add, my friend? And I'll see if I can.
No. I think everyone's kind of added, has spoken my words.
So that would be you're all good then, is it? All right, my friend. No problem. Judith, Treasurer's report. Nothing? Mark, Foundation?
We officially got an email to say that the funds are coming through, but don't tell anybody. So I'm not saying anything.
Top secret?
It just seems absolutely ludicrous. So that's nearly 2.5 months that we were, it was confirmed we had it. And I followed up, a little bit angsty on this at the moment. I followed up very politely and politically correct. And eventually got that email. So people on holidays and moving house, okay. But not to announce it or do anything until it's official.
Which will be
When we know.
Alice with the string.
When that was the opposite, Alma wants to announce it.
When Alan wants to announce it. And to me, I would think something like that is a great media thing to say a lot of what we're doing.
Sure, she's not going to go all like Tasmania, then, yes.
Surely not something so piddly.
We really would like to let give the updates to police and
absolutely.
Successful and that we're underway.
Yeah, but it was really clear, you're not to say anything, don't. So I'm pleased I didn't say anything.
Just to add to what Mark has been saying, I've reached out to the Lilydale Heights about the grant 500 from the club and 500 district. That's a disadvantaged student. They're going to try and identify a disadvantaged student next week. And I just said the criteria is to make sure that there's not funding from another stream that would fill that hole. And so I'll go to the meeting next week and should be able to firm up whether we're going to go to that path or.
Because there's lots of streams in here.
Yeah.
And like no child behind.
Yeah.
Are we thinking like something like that?
I believe it's $500 from the club,
Yeah,
$500 from district for funds for something that student needs.
Yeah.
What that need is, we don't know yet. We know who the student is and what their requirements are.
And I would like to point out that when we were doing the gift wrapping, there was a young girl who special needs, and she came up to me and said, "I love Rotary."
Yeah.
And I said, "Do you?" And she said, "I absolutely love Rotary. Rotary got me my first laptop when I was going through primary school. I used it all through primary school, and I've just finished year 12.
Right.
And I do everything I do on that laptop." I'm not sure what she was called, but
There's a girl there who supported the Never go there behind me, don't you?
it was really lovely to hear. So
It's amazing the difference can make.
Oh,
A couple of $100 to a student that's struggling at the right time can actually turn it over and make it actually.
it's also to the family.
Yeah.
It's one less pressure on the family to have to help.
this young girl had her mother with her, and her mother said that she was she's not non-verbal, but she's hard to understand, and she doesn't handle the written word as in being able to write it, but on the laptop, no problem. You know what she wants to say, just needs to get it through a different manner, and that's fabulous.
Excellent. All right, so I might, just as far as the program is concerned, unless there's any other directors' reports. As far as program, we've got our guest speaker tonight from Amnesty International. Very much looking forward to your discussion. We've got the Wishing Tree Thank You in 2 weeks' time. On the 10th of March, I've tentatively got guest speaker from Food Bank, but I've not heard back from them, so I'll chase them again. Murubak Terrace. Then on the 31st, actually on the 24th, we've got club activities and projects, just a general discussion chewing the fat. And then 31st, we've got the croquet night. And then after that, I've got a couple of people in the background, but nothing firmed up yet. So if there's a guest speaker or an activity that you guys would like to do, let me know. I can block it in. All right. Anything else that we'd like to go through before we go to our guest speaker? Excellent. So our guest speaker is a philanthropy specialist at Amnesty International Australia, deeply passionate about human rights, has been raising funds for a human rights movement for more than 7 years in the USA, Canada and Australia, identifying as a global citizen, lucky fellow, originally from Afghanistan as a refugee in 2017. Since then, he has been an advocate for human rights, raising money and awareness for various platforms about the rights of refugees and the need for a better access to education in his homeland, Afghanistan. Naqib, I do apologize, is also a founder of Camp Afghanistan, a volunteer-run initiative preparing Afghan high school students in international education opportunities. I welcome you to the floor.
All right. What a lovely group to be here. Yeah. Thank you very much for the opportunity and for organizing this. I know there's a lot that goes into organizing something like this, and all the tech, all the obviously the flags and everything. So there is so much that happens, and I'm glad to be part of this evening and to get to know you, share a little bit about the work Amnesty does. Obviously, there's a lot of crossover between Rotary International and Amnesty International. We are all both almost the same movement, doing good for the community. So I would like to acknowledge country. We are all gathering in the acknowledge the traditional owners of this land. We're gathering the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people. They've been the custodians of the land, waterways, and airways of this country for as long as the time can remember. I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging as well. Amnesty International works alongside Indigenous peoples of various countries, including here in Australia, for their right to defend their land. People protect cultural heritage and beyond. And one of the campaigns we run in Australia, one of the three main campaigns that we run here in Australia is focusing on Indigenous justice. Richard made a very generous introduction, but I'd like to share a little bit about myself. So my name is Naqib Sarwari. I am originally from Afghanistan, as Richard mentioned, but I've been living around the world for almost close to 15 years. And I got to come across Rotary International first time as I was a student in Kyrgyzstan in Central Asia. It's a country just north of Afghanistan, where I got a scholarship to study my university degree. That was in 2014. So there was a Rotary International club in Kyrgyzstan that I got to get involved. I was not a member, but I was lucky enough to go to some of the meetings and hear about what the mission of Rotary International has been, for decades, doing some good work. In addition to my role at Amnesty International, obviously my work at Amnesty International is raising funds for human rights work that we do. In addition to that, I previously shared with Jenny that I run a program for young Afghan students to prepare for international education opportunities. So I've got a few pictures in the next slide. The program that I used to run, so originally it started as a volunteer program. It still is a volunteer program. Back in 2017, during my university breaks in the summer, when I went back home to Afghanistan, I was thinking what I could do to carry some of the knowledge that I had learned at university and going to different programs across the world to share with local youth in my community. I live in a rural part of Afghanistan. There's not a lot of access to quality education, obviously, not very rare English courses and beyond. But there's so much talent and there's so much dedicated youth that their talent basically goes to waste because there are lack of opportunities. So I was thinking, what I could do in my ability as a student to make a difference. So I thought, I could organize something like a 1 week intensive, sort of like a summer camp environment where I can share about what I learned overseas and, how I got a scholarship, what goes into you making an application to international education, basically what is a test of English as a foreign language, how you take a recommendation letter, what is a statement of purpose when you make an application for university. And we had to basically look for a scholarship if you cannot afford to study abroad on your own. So some of the pictures you see here, a group of myself and a group of my university friends and students that we organized educational programs for young Afghans. It is still ongoing. The picture on the top left you can see here is an example of the one we hosted last year. It's an online through Zoom. So I know some of our colleagues tonight are joining online as well, some of our friends. So this was basically an example of, we're doing it online. We have mentors from all across different parts of the world, usually university students sharing about, their basically, how they got to study abroad overseas. So this is my side activity, my sort of, my baby project that I run in addition to working for Amnesty International. Today's theme, as Richard mentioned, Rotary International is peace building and conflict prevention. I like the word prevention because it doesn't say conflict resolution, but prevention. So we work on towards it not happening from the beginning, This is a picture, the next one, this is a picture of 1995 in Afghanistan. So this is when I was born in Afghanistan. This picture was taken around the same year that I was born in Afghanistan. And you see a couple of families fleeing violence and war during exactly the same time that I was born. So in 1995, almost 30 plus years ago, was when the Taliban took over Afghanistan for the first time. The next time they got it, and they were still in power at the moment, was 2021. But in 1995, they took control of Afghanistan. And a lot of people, including my family, were internally displaced in Afghanistan as a result of conflict. So, the work I do at Amnesty International is obviously very deeply rooted in what I've been through and, my personal mission in life, to protect and promote human rights. But more specifically tonight, this evening, I'd like to look at the two aspects, what it means, what conflict means to individuals, how it impacts an individual family, an individual person, but also looking at how we at Amnesty International think we can prevent conflict and bring about justice. So the next slide shows journey of my family through different parts of Afghanistan and different years. In 1995, we were internally displaced. We had to move from province to province because my father was targeted by the Taliban back then. But again, in around 2019, when the Taliban slowly got control of more parts of Afghanistan, although you might have seen pictures of the airport in Afghanistan, when the Taliban took power and everybody wanted to flee through the airplanes, through the airport. That was the big media moment. But even before that, the Taliban started taking different parts of Afghanistan at different times. It was a slowly merging, over time, not just on August of 2021 when they took control of the capital city. But even before that, they were slowly taking parts of Afghanistan. So my family in 2017, that's my hometown in Afghanistan. So in 2017, they moved to the western part of Afghanistan, then back to the capital city, and then again in 2021 when the Taliban took control, they went to the northern part of Afghanistan and then to the further eastern part of Afghanistan, just to survive. Because of my work at Amnesty International and because of my father's work in the previous government of Afghanistan, we were directly targeted by the Taliban. So my family, in order to survive, had to flee basically, the conflict and being targeted by the Taliban, until eventually they fled in 2021. They were resettled as refugees in Ireland. At the time I was working at Amnesty International, and I've been reaching to some of my colleagues for help. My colleagues at Amnesty International Ireland, reached out and said, we could help your family. So it was my family, along with many other human rights defenders whose families were targeted in Afghanistan, resettled in Ireland. So that's basically the impact of conflict in my own personal life, in addition to the work that I do at Amnesty International. You might know what Amnesty International is, but I will share a little bit about Amnesty International. In the next slide, there is the picture of our founder. So in 1961, Amnesty International was founded in the United Kingdom by a British lawyer. His name was Peter Benenson. Peter Benenson has been thinking about people who are in prison for political reasons for a long time. But a morning of 1961, he was taking a train in London as he was reading a newspaper. And in the newspaper, he sees that 2 Portuguese students were in prison simply for a toast to freedom. In a bar, 2 young Portuguese students, said, a toast to freedom, and they were arrested simply for making a toast. Peter Benenson thought this is not normal. This shouldn't happen, and we have to mobilize so that we can speak against this. He started writing an article in the Telegraph, and then following by an appeal, asking for ordinary individuals, like grassroots local groups like Rotary International could be one, church groups, school groups, and university groups, to write letters and defend and bring it, not only bring attention to people who are in prison for the political purposes, for political reasons, but also to demand their release as part of it. So that's what Amnesty International basically, that's where Amnesty International emerged more than almost 65 years ago. But in terms of how do we want to, our theory of change, to put it in the next slide, I can show how Amnesty International wants to bring about change. The work we do basically ends up in 3 phases. The first one is research. Amnesty International conducts research all across the globe. We have a presence in more than 150 countries and territories across the globe, and more than 10 million members, ordinary individuals from across the globe. We conduct research into situations of conflict. There's a war, or there's a human rights crisis, or even things like, the right to protest, the right to abortion, and more and more. We do conduct researches because in this day and age, it's very difficult to know with the misinformation and disinformation what is right, what is not, to make sure that you have the first-hand research. So that's what Amnesty is known. Amnesty's research has been used in the United Nations, international courts, criminal court, court of justice, and beyond. The next one is we do advocacy and lobbying. So once the research is completed, be the same slide.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So advocacy and lobbying, what we do is we pressure governments to change rules and laws that are not according to human rights. And the last one, we do campaigns and actions. So that's where the heavy power of Amnesty lies, is on ordinary individuals taking action, signing petitions, going out to talk to a member of the parliament about certain human rights issues across the globe. Now's the time for the next one. Yeah. So so we, as I mentioned, we do campaigns across the world, but closer to home here in Australia, we're conducting 3 main campaigns here in Australia. Of the 3 main campaigns, the next one, please. Yes, is Refugee Rights, Indigenous Justice, and Human Rights Act. I could share a little bit about all of these campaigns. In terms of refugee rights, Australia is taking 20,000 refugees per year. That's a higher number than the previous government. When Liberals were in power, it was 13,000. Now it's 20,000, even though the Albanese government promised to make it 27, but it's still sitting at 20,000 people per year that are coming to Australia through government-sponsored programs. So that's basically taxpayer paying for the resettlement. There's also a program in Australia at the moment that individual groups and local community could come together and privately sponsor refugees. Unfortunately, any private community that sponsors the refugee is taking one number coming down from the government. So we have been trying to convince the government and work with the government to make sure that when refugees are sponsored through private refugee sponsorship, that's a plus situation, not a minus situation. But that's refugee rights is one of our priorities because we are one of the countries that have offshore detention. When refugees make an asylum claim in Australia, they would be processed in places like Nauru on offshore detention. And also, given the global crisis of refugees, the conflict, every conflict produces refugees. Just to speak of my own country, in Afghanistan, has been in conflict for almost 40 years now. In part because of, different global actors coming in and playing, the Russians in the 1970s when my dad was a teenager, and then, the Americans and everything in between. So all the conflicts obviously produce refugees because it puts pressure on the economy, it puts pressure, there's war and conflict ongoing, and then the effects of conflict remain for a very long time. It is not like, for example, when the Americans pulled out of Afghanistan or the Russians pulled out of Afghanistan, that the conflict would stop. The funding that has been put towards those conflicts continue, the extremist ideologies that have been developed as a result continue to remain in the country for a very long time, unfortunately. The next campaign we do is on Indigenous justice. The main campaign on Indigenous justice we do is to raise the age of criminal responsibility. Currently, Australia's puts kids as young as 10-year-olds in prison, which is very rare across the world. Even Russia has a 14-year age of criminal responsibility. So we're trying to work with the government to raise the age of criminal responsibility and to make sure that Indigenous kids who are in detention find a better pathway instead of going to prison, that they could be locally, that investment rather be made locally so that they don't get to end up in prison in the first place. And there's also a webinar happening. Jenny has that email as invited. We do obviously conduct a lot of webinars and a lot of information sessions on different topics. Next week we have We have one on Indigenous justice, on youth justice, youth and Indigenous justice. We have webinars coming up about different crises, whether it's in Gaza, whether it's in Sudan, Afghanistan. So it comes in different times. The best way to stay in touch, if you would like to, is to sign up to go to amnesty.org.au website and sign up to the newsletter, and you will get all these petitions, all these webinars and information sessions that come in. The third campaign we do in Australia is the Human Rights Act. Human Rights Act, Australia is the only liberal democracy among Canada, the US, UK that doesn't have a federal Human Rights Act in place. Obviously, we do enjoy a lot of human rights, and I am glad to have come to this country and enjoy those human rights myself. But these rights are not constitutionally protected. They are basically in the favor of the government of the day to decide this power you can keep, this power you cannot. So like a Bill of Rights in the US, for example, the Canadians have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The UK, I think, has something similar, whether it's called the Bill of Rights or something else. But Australia is the only country that doesn't have such thing in the federal level, although in Victoria, we are lucky to have one at the state level. So Amnesty Australia is working to make sure that we can have a Human Rights Act at the federal level that protects our basic rights like freedom of speech, freedom of protest, the right to return to Australia if you're a citizen, so that you're not arbitrarily forbidden from coming into the country if you're a citizen, and beyond rights like that. Globally, we do conduct a lot of other human rights campaigns, and in the next slide, I can show you a few pictures. So we do obviously a lot of work. Individuals at Risk is the first one. Is a campaign similar to what the Peter Benenson, our founder, was, people who are in prison for political purposes. That was the initial idea of founding Amnesty International, although our mission has extended extensively. Now we work on crisis response, death penalty, protect the protest campaign. We work on women and girls' rights, climate justice, LGBTQ, IA+, and global human rights violations. So Amnesty works in various different campaigns across the globe that, even though I work for Amnesty, sometimes it's really hard to keep up with everything that is happening on all the campaigns and all the research that is happening around the world. So the next slide, I wanted to bring it back to conflict prevention and peace building. And I had a moment of thinking, whether the absence of war means peace. I mean, certainly it doesn't, because I come back to my own country as an example, Afghanistan. At the moment, there's no war ongoing in Afghanistan, but obviously people don't enjoy peace and freedom. There are a lot of human rights violations that are happening that doesn't take news headlines, or certainly not considered a war. But people being in prison for political reasons, women and girls as young as 10 years old not being able to go to school. Schools are shut down entirely across the country. I had a lot of our students that I shared photos of before in the volunteer program that I ran, that there were high school students, grade 12, and some who were in university, that just the moment Taliban took over Afghanistan, they have not been able to go to school even for a day since then. So obviously, absence of war doesn't mean peace. In order for peace to thrive, there has to be, justice, equality, and rights. So that justice could come in forms of making sure that those who have committed human rights violations are brought to justice at the national or international level. Amnesty International has been working, has been campaigning for bringing anybody who has been part of international crises to the International Court, International Criminal Court, and International Court of Justice are the two that Amnesty International has been really sort of focused on bringing those who violate human rights into these courts, whether it's Putin for invading Ukraine, or Hamas fighters who launched the October 7 attacks, or Israeli politicians who after October 7, committed human rights violations in Gaza and beyond. Everybody, no matter who you are, where you come from. I know Rotary International is non-political and non-religious, so is Amnesty International. In addition, we're not political, we're not religious, but we are not neutral either. When human rights violations happen, we do take side. We do want those who violate human rights to be brought to justice. I was actually at a conference in Sydney with the people from Red Cross, and I like their mission is slightly different because they're neutral. So in situations of conflict, they don't care who shot the bullet and who got whatever. They would go in and help everybody, regardless. While Amnesty International is obviously we're not political, but we're not neutral either. So we do take sides, not politically, but on the basis of human rights and international law. Yeah. So so a few points I might repression can exist without war. In places like Afghanistan, there's not an active war in Afghanistan at the moment, but obviously there is repression at certain levels of the society, but more so for women and girls. From the moment they're born, even before they're born, honestly, there's repression up until the moment they live to the last minute they live. There's repression throughout for women and girls. So the next one is stability without accountability is fragile as well. And structural violence, there's still violence. Yeah, it's all right. Yeah. So I put it, stability without accountability is fragile, because when human rights violations happen, those who have committed human rights violations have to come to justice, so that it ends up becoming a closure. When Taliban, like for example in Afghanistan, when the Taliban took over Afghanistan, they said, we're doing an amnesty. So anybody who had committed any sort of crimes or whatever before that we didn't like, we're gonna just say, that's it, no justice, nothing. Everybody come back and leave. But unfortunately, those things, gives opportunity for individual vengeance, and enmities that are being developed as a result, because there is no accountability. It gives up, radical ideas still remain, and people, one with the other. So Amnesty International, even though the name is called Amnesty, but we're not at all for Amnesty. We do advocate for people who have violated human rights to be brought to justice anywhere around the world. The next slide, Richard. Yeah, the next slide I put a map of active conflict is taken from Council of Foreign Relations based in the US. A map of active conflicts across the world. So these are conflicts that are considered, when people lose their lives. A map of active conflicts, anywhere from Venezuela, obviously, recently with everything happening with Trump and the presidency, but all across the globe, there are dots in Africa, in Asia, in parts of Americas. Ongoing conflicts happening around the world. Certainly, there's no shortage of work for either Rotary International or Amnesty International to do, unfortunately, around the world. I was actually just talking to Margaret and saying, we've been trying to be out of business for more than 60 years now. So hopefully for the day we can close down all of our offices. But the next slide shows, the civilians are the ones who are paying the highest price when there's a conflict, whether it's in Sudan, in Afghanistan, Ukraine, Gaza, Iran, anywhere in the world. It's the civilians who pay the highest price, and the most vulnerable are the ones who are like the lower socioeconomic backgrounds face the most challenges. Anywhere in these conflicts, people who have money, people who have a good life, or those who are in power can get out, move to another country, this and that. But it's usually the ones who are the lowest socioeconomic backgrounds that end up being the one who are most vulnerable. And my very last slide is peace building in practice. So how Amnesty International looks at peace building is that we do human rights research, which obviously ends up being exposing abuses around the world. We use that research to influence governments and institutions. We conduct campaigns, so campaigns in Australia and anywhere around the world. Ask our individual members, 10 plus million people, to take action on those, bring attention to it, so that it empowers grassroots action. And all of these come together, we hope will eventually lead up to peace and conflict prevention. So yes, that's everything I wanted to share this evening, and I'm happy to take any questions, either online or from the room if you have.
Anyone got any questions?
Not sure what the answer is. I'm just wondering why, when we've got a lot of refugees come to the country, why is it 95% male?
I mean,
Why are the males?
well, it depends on the situation, individual situations. I think in Australia, there's a lot of refugees who have been resettled, who have been in Indonesia for some time in detention and end up being here. You know, the journey they take is not an easy one. Although I came to Australia, I went to Canada as a refugee, but then I got married. My wife lives here, so I came here through partner visa. But my brother made that boat journey from Afghanistan all the way to Indonesia, and then was resettled to Australia via UNHCR program. For those who are married and have kids, you know, this journey is so long and so precarious that they cannot think of, you know, bringing family with them. It would be very hard to survive. You know, being on the boats, making, you know, water trips between Indonesia and Australia, and a lot of them end up being in Christmas Island and then resettled in Australia, or going to offshore detention. These journeys are very much you know, life-threatening and very difficult. That I think at that point they decide, you know, it's better just for me to go through it rather than the entire family. So that'll be one thing. I do not know all the reasons, but this is just what I'm guessing, you know, based on my own experience. Is depending on different parts of the world, it's usually men. Like, for example, in Afghanistan, my dad was working for the previous government. Nobody knew my mom in terms of, you know, her activities. She was a housewife, you know, she took care of the kids, raised the family, you know, took care of everything domestically. But my dad was out in the society, and it was my dad who was being targeted, not my mom. So my mom could stay at home, that's with us, and take care of the kids, you know, would have been fine. But for my dad, would have been very difficult because he was the one who was targeted. So if in my family, for example, my dad wanted to make that refugee trip, he would have decided to come by himself because, first of all, we wouldn't be a direct target. We would be the secondary targets, but he was the first target. And obviously, depending on the journey, on how they come. But they do end up, you know, in the cases of Afghan refugees and the community that I am in touch in across Australia, but more so in Melbourne, is that they do end up sponsoring families once they get here. So, for example, my brother, he was single, but he had friends who were married, who made the journey by themselves, alone, guys. Once they got here, they immediately sponsored families. Yeah. So that would be the reason. That's what I think would be the reason. Yeah.
And then,
I think
they're obviously at risk.
Yes. I mean, I think it would be a situation of, you know, choosing between the two bad, you know, whether the boat journey is bad or leaving your family behind is which of the two bad you know choose to decide. Maybe relying on family, but yeah, because obviously once they are in Australia, they would have work rights and be able to work and send support back to families through, you know, they would be sending money basically. But while they are on transit, usually bigger families would look after the family if possible. You know, if they have for example, the kids, the grandparents, and everyone else would be looking after, depending on the situation, obviously. Well, I mean, my dad actually passed away before my family made the trip to Ireland, but my mom, my mom is taking English courses. Yeah, she's taking English courses, taking driving license courses at the moment. Yeah, everybody else in the family, but my mom is older. She's not thinking of taking a job, but everybody else in the family, my sisters and my brothers have been or have already gotten jobs and we're going to university. Yeah. Yeah, no, my mom has a lot, you know, with taking care of the grandkids, so that my brothers and my sister-in-law could go to work. Yeah, she's definitely. I mean, we have been trying to get her to come to Australia for some time because my brother and I live here in Melbourne, it's a bit complicated with all the visa and everything, but we'll figure it out. Yeah, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
For me, there's the three elements, peace and then two substrate. So there's peacemakers, peacekeepers, and peace builders.
Yes.
So the first two have done. Okay, so the peacemakers have done, so they come in. Peacekeepers have done, and Rotary kicks in with peace builders because we don't have done. And then with peace, there's, as you sort of mentioned, there's negative peace and positive peace. So negative peace is lack of violence, but there's still oppression, etc. And there's positive peace, which is a good, trusting government. There's a good welfare system, that kind of stuff. And I think the challenge for Rotary is where we fit in, because we're not peacemakers, we're not peace keepers, but we're peace builders. So we build the infrastructure. So we come after a disaster or a conflict and we build it so that it stays. So I used to call it shift and stick, you know, so, you know, the shift is people come with guns and you know, you're going to behave. And the shift is, this is the infrastructure that makes it that your society can continue to thrive without going into conflict. So it's a huge challenge and it's everywhere. And that's why I like Rotary, because we're peace builders. We're just in the background, churning away. Everyone else is left. East Timor-Leste was a good example. They had the conflict and all that sort of stuff. And then our club went in and we supported a clinic. And it was just helping people with medical stuff. And I walked around with one of the doctors and I said, you've been and seen 16, 17 patients and you didn't clean your hands. And he went, with what? So then we were able to come in and we sent a whole lot of sanitizer over. So he's able to do that. So, you know, the world's in conflict. But I think it's important to understand the three differences, you know, the peacemakers, peacekeepers, the peace builders, and then the difference between negative peace and positive peace. I think you're doing great work.
Yeah, thanks for sure. No, that's a very good way to put it. For sure. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah, you think?
The room funny thing.
Oh,
He's the one.
yeah, he's still there. Everyone, any questions, my friend? No, he's shaking his head. No, he's good.
Okay. Well, thank you, Naqib. We had lunch a little while ago and thought it would be an interesting speaker to have. So thank you so much for giving your time.
Yeah, thanks for
Well,
having
this is just a little token of
me.
our
Thank you. Yeah, I love
appreciation.
coffee, Mike. Yeah.
And we'll also make a donation to Rotary International Health. Yeah, on which is what we do for all our speakers.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
So thank you.
Thank you very much.
I've yeah.
Thank you.
But yeah, it's fantastic. I've been involved with Amnesty International since I was a teenager and writing letters as a teenager at a church youth group.
Yeah.
And but one of the things I love about it is with all the campaigns around the world, as Naqib said, you can sign up to emails or you can just go onto the website. If you like me and get overloaded with emails, I go onto the website from time to time and you can send letters to politicians or whatever the options are really simply.
Yeah.
And it only takes a few minutes and you can be part of making a difference, which is something that I really value. And it's an organisation where apart from giving money, there's other ways that you can be involved as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, as Jenny mentioned, we've been trying to make it as easy as possible. So you can go to the website, pick a petition, just put your postal code, and it will be sending that petition to your local MP, the relevant ministers of that campaign and beyond, So it's basically very easy. Yeah.
All right.
So thank you.
Well, thank you very much for this. Yeah. Thank you.
I was going to say too, if anyone's interested, Naqib just mentioned they're holding as part of the Youth Justice Campaign, an Indigenous Solidarity Forum online next Wednesday night, which is to learn more about what's happening in the youth justice system. So if anyone's interested in that, I can give you details to register. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for sure. Thank you.
I call on the Presidente to close the meeting.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming along. I think it's been a productive meeting, even though we're small in numbers. And thank you very, very much for your interesting talk. It was really eye-opening. And I love Richard's explanation of where we fit. That's really, really, really good. And very insightful. So I wish everybody well for the next couple of weeks, and I hope to see you all here for the thank you for the Wishing Tree appeal.
Which said, a text the other night. 24/16.
Yeah. So there'll be a few.
Yeah.
So if you can come a little bit earlier, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to. That's right. Yeah, I'm not that pretty. That's
Go
it.
on, mate. Go on.
I just wanted to say, I think Cheryl mentioned that I'm keeping an eye on the youth emails, but we actually want someone to take on the youth role while Simon's taking the leave of absence. It's not going to be that big at the moment because as it's coming into the end of the year, Rotary year, we're just keeping an eye on emails and just monitoring it, and that's all. So if someone else can take on that role of keeping an eye on that email and just being a youth representative while Simon's away, that will be really helpful because we're all, I guess, trying to do 2 or 3 things at the same time.
I can probably do that for you, Arun, because I'm engaged with the Lilydale Heights and that, and I've got access to the
Youth email? Lovely.
Yeah,
Thank you,
I-
Richard.
that's
in your stead on. And I hope
That'd
it's
be
checked
great.
in the mail.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, you know the
Double more
answer.
wages, please.
Yep. No. The big 0 is coming on the
Yeah.
Yeah, no worries, buddy.
All right.
Okay, appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for coming.
All right. Ding.
See you all. Have a good
We need someone